To those who don't know Julia, her son Lucas was just diagnosed a little over a month ago with Sanfilippo Syndrome type C.
And Julia did not have the best of 22s to begin with, right?
Yeah. So she hails from Ukraine. So this has been kind of a crazy past, 12 months for her. Julia, why don't you tell us a little about yourself? Tell us how your family's doing in Ukraine, and let's open the conversation up to kind of get your story out there too, and hopefully this can help you in your fundraising efforts too.
Yeah, a little bit of a background is my dad, he's an oncologist and he's been managing clinical trials in breast cancer for many years in Ukraine. So I'm kind of familiar of a little bit of that side of what happens during the clinical trials, the proper design. I help him translate some of those articles from English to Russian or Ukrainian in the past. So unfortunately, never thought I would need to do a lot of research in this area myself. About a year and a half ago, my mom got diagnosed with a breast cancer, and I immediately jumped, searched for her diagnosis, found out that 76% of survivability in 10 years if she continues with the treatment and eventually gets the surgery. And I've got a good idea that there are good prospects for that. And we obviously did not expect that February 24, and she will have to essentially leave the country due to the bombings that were happening all over the country and travel all the way to the United States. And we would have to navigate the US healthcare system, right? She was all set back in Ukraine. My dad was her doctor. She would have had surgery there. Now we're kind of starting from scratch here. So we were lucky in some sense that she happened to be with us because, as many of you know, Sanfilippo kids are not easy to manage. And so having her at home and being able to care for him when, after school care would refuse to take him, or babysitters would bail on us and not come back without notice. That was really helpful to have a family member, despite all of its challenges. And when we got the diagnosis, I think the first 4 hours were like a blessing because I was still in the denial. I was thinking, well, he probably is the carrier, but he can't be actually sick with that. And the more that I read about the Sanfilippo and the symptoms, and it kind of all made sense, the pieces of the puzzle came together. Oh, the hernia he had at 2 months, it wasn't coincidentally a different thing. It was part of the Sanfilippo picture. Or his affectionate nature. Most Sanfilippo kids probably know, right? They're giving a lot of smiles and kisses. That's also part of the symptom. Or his coarse hair that I envied. That's also part of his symptom. And I can definitely relate to experience of Jamie because Lucas was not diagnosed for a while. I noticed symptoms when he was 3. I have an older child who's healthy, and I could see a drastic difference in their development. But even though one of the first tests that were prescribed for him was a genetic testing, I didn't question the prescription, but they tested only for Fragile X and I think something else, but none of the lysosomal diseases that American Association of Pediatrics recommends. And it wasn't caught until 2 years later when we changed the neurologist and she looked at some of those prior testing done and explained, well, that's not it. And she referred us for another test that finally told us what the real root cause was. But until then, it could be ADHD. He was treated for ADHD. It was similarly suspected for ODD. He had a significant learning delay. So even our psychiatrist was treating him with ADHD, said there's probably something else going on.
So what was that breakthrough moment? Like, what was it that finally cleared the brush, so to speak, and gave you a clean answer for what was happening with your son?
It was our neurologist who scheduled all sorts of tests. So we had x-ray done of the neck to ensure there's nothing there. We had MRI done under sedation. Again, it came back fairly normal. And then she questioned again the genetic testing that was done previously. And when she realized it wasn't the one that was actually recommended when kids are experiencing significant learning delays. And per school testing, he was in the below 3 percentile. For some tests, he wouldn't even be able to comprehend the question, let alone to answer them, right? So for example, he knows all the letters, but he can't pronounce the sound because he doesn't understand when he's being asked, what is the sound for letter A? So that was something that triggered both the neurologist and psychiatrist to suspect there might be some other underlying condition. That's the common story that I keep hearing. They're misdiagnosed with ADHD, with autism, with ODD, but it takes years to get to the real diagnosis. And frankly, I was also pretty ignorant about genetic diseases. I thought it was just like this lottery that is very rare. But as soon as we told our friends about what's happening with Luke, I found out I have a friend with a kid with SMA, which is also another rare genetic disease. I have two friends with kids with chronic SIN gene issue, which causes deafness in kids. And so it's rare that two parents with the same gene defect would match. But if and when you match, it's 25% that your kid will be a sick kid and get this disease. And that's a huge chance. And we have the genetic testing available today that parents can do before they have kids and learn about those chances. But to date, when I speak to other doctors and parents, and they're like, no one recommends it. No one talks to parents about it. No one has the guidance of how to do this test.